The United States of America, once a beacon of freedom, now shrouded in the darkness of tyranny. Corruption festered within the halls of power, its tendrils choking the very life out of the nation. The government, once the protector of its people, had become their oppressor. Rights were trampled, freedoms extinguished, and the voice of the people silenced under the iron fist of oppression. From the ashes of despair, 7 men rose to challenge the encroaching darkness. Eugene, Troy, Chad, Chris, Evan, Aubrey, and Daniel. 7 names that would become synonymous with courage, defiance, and the unwavering pursuit of freedom. These were not career soldiers, hardened by years of warfare, but ordinary citizens driven by an extraordinary love for their country. They came from different walks of life, their paths converging on the battleground of liberty. Each man possessed a unique set of skills, honed to perfection through years of dedication. They were blacksmiths of freedom, forging their destinies in the fires of resistance. And they were ready to stake their lives on the belief that even the mightiest of tyrants could be brought down by the unwavering spirit of a determined few. The nation they swore to protect had become fractured, a house divided against itself. The government's grip on power had sown seeds of discord, turning neighbor against neighbor. But amidst the chaos and fear, a spirit of defiance began to stir. Whispers of resistance, carried on the wind, reached the ears of those yearning for change. People from all walks of life, united by their love for freedom, answered the call. They were farmers and teachers, shopkeepers and mechanics, ordinary citizens transformed into extraordinary heroes. Theirs was a fight not for power or glory, but for the soul of a nation teetering on the brink. They knew the risks, the sacrifices that lay ahead, but their resolve never wavered. For they were fighting for something far greater than themselves. They were fighting for the future, for the hope of a nation reborn in the flames of liberty. The seeds of rebellion had been sown long before the first shot was fired. They were planted in the hearts of men like Eugene, who witnessed firsthand the government's descent into tyranny. Eugene, a man of quiet strength and unwavering principles, had watched in dismay as the foundations of their nation crumbled. He saw the erosion of their rights, the silencing of dissent, the growing disparity between the powerful and the powerless. Troy, a seasoned veteran with a keen tactical mind, had sworn an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, an oath he held sacred. To him, the government's actions were a betrayal of that oath, a perversion of the very ideals they were meant to uphold. His sense of duty, once unwavering, now burned with the fire of righteous anger. Chad, a man of action and few words, had always believed in the power of self-reliance. But as the government tightened its grip, he saw the spirit of independence being crushed under the weight of oppression. He knew that freedom wasn't a gift, but a right that had to be fought for, defended with unwavering resolve. The call to arms was not a thunderous roar, but a whisper that spread like wildfire across the land. It began in hushed tones, in secret meetings, in the dead of night. Like-minded individuals, united by their shared ideals and their growing desperation, found each other. They formed small groups, cells of resistance operating under the radar of the oppressive regime. Eugene, with his natural leadership and unwavering determination, became a beacon for these scattered groups. His message was simple yet powerful. Freedom was not a gift to be passively received, but a right to be actively claimed. He spoke of unity, of courage, of the need to stand together against tyranny. The response was overwhelming. From every corner of the fractured nation, men and women answered the call. They came from all walks of life, united by their love for their country and their unwavering belief in the principles it once represented. They were farmers, teachers, shopkeepers, veterans, ordinary citizens transformed into extraordinary heroes by the extraordinary circumstances they faced. The group that would become known as Whammy was forged not in the fires of war, but in the crucible of shared purpose. They came together in secret, their numbers swelling with each passing day. They trained tirelessly, honing their skills, sharing their knowledge, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. Eugene, despite his quiet demeanor, proved to be a natural leader. He inspired loyalty and respect, not through fear or intimidation, but through his unwavering commitment to their cause, and his genuine concern for each member of the group. He understood that their strength lay not just in their individual abilities, but in their unity, their willingness to fight for each other as fiercely as they fought for their freedom. Troy, with his military background, took charge of their tactical training. He taught them the art of warfare, the importance of discipline, strategy, and coordination. He instilled in them the mindset of a warrior, the understanding that victory was not guaranteed, but earned through careful planning and unwavering resolve. Chad, the master of self-reliance, shared his knowledge of survival, weapons handling, and close-quarters combat. He taught them how to be resourceful, to adapt to any situation, to turn everyday objects into tools of resistance. He emphasized the importance of speed, agility, and the willingness to fight dirty when necessary. The men of Whammy understood that freedom was not a passive ideal, but a right that demanded active defense. They knew that words, no matter how eloquent, would not sway the hearts of tyrants. Force, or at least the credible threat of it, was the only language their oppressors understood. And so they armed themselves, not out of bloodlust, but out of necessity. Their weapons were not mere tools of destruction, but instruments of liberation, each one carefully selected and meticulously maintained. They were extensions of their will, embodiments of their unwavering resolve to reclaim their stolen liberty. For these were not just men fighting a battle, they were guardians of freedom, standing as a bulwark against the encroaching darkness. Eugene, a firm believer in practicality and versatility, favored the AR-15 platform. His rifle, a testament to his meticulous nature, was a blend of high-end components, each one chosen for its reliability and performance. Atop its receiver sat a Trigicon ACOG, its crystal-clear optics offering a magnified view of the battlefield. His sidearm, a Glock 20, was chambered in the potent 10mm round, a powerful deterrent for close-quarters encounters. Every detail, from the extended magazine release to the stippled grip, spoke of a man who understood the importance of preparation and the unforgiving nature of combat. Chris, a patient and methodical individual, had an almost spiritual connection with his rifle, a Daniel Defense DDM-4 V7. Its sleek lines and precision engineering appealed to his sense of order and purpose. Through countless hours at the range, he had forged an unbreakable bond with his weapon, his every shot a testament to his unwavering focus and dedication. Atop his rifle sat a Leupold Mark V HD scope, its advanced optics turning distant targets into close-up portraits. With each squeeze of the trigger, the rifle barked to life, sending a 5.56 round hurtling towards its mark with pinpoint accuracy. Chris's reputation as a marksman, honed through years of dedicated practice, preceded him, striking fear into the hearts of his enemies. Troy, a pragmatist with a keen understanding of tactical realities, had chosen the FN Scar 17S as his primary weapon. Its robust design and 7.62 by 51mm NATO chambering spoke of its ability to deliver overwhelming firepower when it mattered most. His rifle, equipped with a Vortex Razor HD Gen 3 scope, was a tool of precision and power, capable of reaching out and touching targets at extended ranges. Troy's movements, honed through years of military training, were fluid and efficient, his every action betraying a deep understanding of the deadly dance of combat. Chad, a whirlwind of energy and aggression, favored the compact lethality of the Teva X95 bullpup rifle. Its short overall length and 5.56 NATO chambering made it ideal for the close-quarters battles he relished. With a Meprolite M21 reflex sight providing rapid target acquisition, he was a force to be reckoned with in any confined environment. His sidearm, a SIG Sauer P320 X5 Legion, was an extension of his personality, fast, reliable, and capable of delivering devastating firepower. Chad, always eager to engage the enemy, was the tip of Whammy's spear, a relentless force that carved a path through the opposition. Evan, the youngest of the group, possessed a natural aptitude for technology and a fascination with explosives. His weapon of choice was a customized LWRCI ICA-5, its 5.56 NATO chambering offering a balance between firepower and controllability. A Trigicon VCOG scope provided versatility for engagements at varying ranges, while a Silencer Co. Omega suppressor ensured his shots were delivered with a whisper rather than a roar. His true passion, however, lay in the art of controlled demolition. Evan possessed an innate understanding of the destructive power of explosives and the precision required to employ them effectively. To him, explosives were not merely tools of destruction, but instruments of change capable of reshaping the battlefield to his will. The rugged Colorado mountains, once a sanctuary for hikers and nature enthusiasts, had become a battleground. The government, in its paranoia, had established a series of checkpoints along key mountain passes, their concrete bunkers and razor-wire fences scarring the pristine landscape. One such checkpoint, nestled high atop a windswept ridge, stood as a formidable obstacle to Whammy's advance. From its elevated position, the checkpoint commanded a panoramic view of the surrounding valleys, its heavy machine guns and watchful sentries seemingly impenetrable. It was a symbol of the government's iron grip on the nation, a stark reminder of the challenges that lay ahead for Whammy's determined band of freedom fighters. Eugene, studying the checkpoint through his binoculars, knew that a direct assault would be suicidal. The enemy, entrenched and well-armed, held all the advantages. Their only hope lay in exploiting the element of surprise, in using the very terrain that seemed to favor the enemy against them. He gathered his men, their faces grim but resolute, their eyes reflecting the weight of the task ahead. Eugene, This checkpoint is the first test of our resolve. We will strike at dawn, using the cover of darkness to our advantage. Our goal is not to engage in a prolonged firefight, but to neutralize the enemy swiftly and decisively. Section 2, the marksman's eye. Chris, his Daniel Defense DDM-4V7 resting comfortably in his grip, had already selected his vantage point. Atop a rocky outcrop overlooking the checkpoint from a distance, he would be the silent harbinger of the coming storm. The wind whispered through the pines, carrying the scent of pine needles and damp earth, but Chris paid it no heed. His focus was absolute, his mind clear, his senses attuned to the rhythm of his breathing. Through the Leupold Mark V HD scope, the checkpoint seemed to draw closer, its every detail magnified, every movement of its occupants scrutinized. He identified his targets, the sentries, the machine gun nests, the officers in their command bunker, each one a threat to be neutralized with surgical precision. As the first faint glow of dawn illuminated the eastern sky, Chris received the signal. A single nod from Eugene, relayed through their encrypted comms, was all it took. He took a final breath, exhaled slowly, and squeezed the trigger. The suppressed report of his rifle was barely audible above the wind, but the impact was undeniable. The sentry atop the guard tower, caught completely off guard, crumpled to the ground, his lifeless finger releasing its grip on the trigger of his machine gun. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the sound of Chris's bolts cycling, chambering another round. Section 3, Fire and Fury. The first shot was the catalyst, unleashing a torrent of violence that shattered the morning calm. Chad, his Taver X-95 spitting fire, led the initial assault, his compact frame a blur as he darted through the trees, exploiting every bit of cover. Aubrey, his Keltec RFB providing covering fire, moved with surprising agility, his knowledge of the terrain rivaling that of a mountain goat. The checkpoint's defenders, caught off guard by the ferocity and precision of the attack, struggled to mount a coherent defense. Troy, his FN Scar 17S barking its deadly song, laid down a withering barrage of suppressing fire, pinning the enemy down, while Evan, his LWRCI ICA-5 held tight against his shoulder, picked off targets with methodical precision. The air crackled with the sound of gunfire, the smell of gunpowder stinging the nostrils. Eugene and Daniel, moving like phantoms through the chaos, flanked the enemy, their AR-15S spitting lead with deadly accuracy. They were the calm at the eye of the storm, their movements measured, their every shot counting. Section 1, City of Steel and Shadows, Chicago, the Windy City. A sprawling metropolis of steel and glass, now draped in the shadow of tyranny. The streets, once teeming with life, were eerily deserted, patrolled by heavily armed government troops. Buildings stood scarred and broken, bearing silent witness to the struggle that had engulfed the nation. Whammy had anticipated a fight, but the sheer scale of the resistance they encountered in Chicago was staggering. The government, determined to crush any hope of rebellion, had transformed the city into a fortress, its citizens caught in the crossfire. Chad, his senses heightened by the constant tension, moved through the urban jungle with predatory grace. The Taver X-95, its compact design perfectly suited for close-quarters combat, felt like an extension of his own body. He knew every alleyway, every fire escape, every rooftop. These were his hunting grounds, and he was the apex predator. Troy, his Scar 17S, providing the heavy punch they needed to breach the enemy's defenses, kept pace with Chad's relentless advance. His military training had taught him the importance of adaptability, of using the environment to his advantage. And in the labyrinthine streets of Chicago, every corner, every doorway, every parked car became a potential point of ambush or a shield against enemy fire. Section 2, the City of Brotherly Strife, Philadelphia, the City of Brotherly Love, now a battleground scarred by division and despair. The government's grip on the city was palpable, its presence felt in every checkpoint, every armored vehicle and every nervous glance from the few remaining citizens. The air was thick with tension, the silence punctuated by the distant crackle of gunfire and the rumble of armored vehicles. Eugene, his face etched with the weariness of a long campaign, knew that Philadelphia represented a critical juncture in their fight. The city's strategic importance, coupled with its symbolic resonance as the birthplace of American independence, made it a prime target for both sides. Daniel, his normally stoic demeanor hardened by the relentless conflict, had devised a daring plan to infiltrate the city's heavily fortified center. Their goal was not to engage in a protracted street battle, but to strike at the heart of the government's control, to disrupt their command and control structure, and to sow chaos within their ranks. Chris, positioned high atop a crumbling bell tower, his DDM-4V7 scanning the cityscape for signs of enemy movement, was their eyes in the sky. His job was to eliminate key targets, to disrupt enemy communications, and to provide cover for his comrades as they moved through the treacherous urban terrain. His finger rested lightly on the trigger, his breathing slow and steady, his mind focused on the task at hand. He was the silent guardian, the unseen hand that could strike with deadly precision from the shadows. Section 3. A nation's capital. A tyrant's stronghold. Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. Once a symbol of democracy and freedom, now a fortress held hostage by a tyrannical regime. The iconic monuments, once sources of national pride, now loomed over the city like silent sentinels, their grandeur overshadowed by the oppressive atmosphere. As Whammy's forces approached the outskirts of the city, they could feel the weight of history pressing down on them. This was the culmination of their long journey, the final confrontation that would determine the fate of their nation. Eugene, his AR-15 slung across his chest, his Glock 20 strapped to his thigh, gathered his men one last time. Their numbers had swelled over the months, their ranks bolstered by ordinary citizens who had answered the call to freedom. He looked into their eyes, farmers, teachers, shopkeepers, veterans, all united by a common purpose, a shared belief in the ideals that had once made their nation great. He saw fear, yes, but also determination, a quiet resolve that transcended their individual anxieties. Eugene, as Eugene, we stand on the precipice of history. Eugene began, his voice raspy but steady, amplified by a portable loudspeaker. The choices we make today will determine not only our own fate, but the fate of our children, our grandchildren, and generations yet unborn. Section 1. Storming the Bastion, the White House, a symbol of American power, now a fortress under siege. Barricades, razor wire, and heavily armed guards transformed the once welcoming grounds into a deadly maze. Whammy, their ranks swollen by thousands of freedom fighters, prepared for their final desperate push. Eugene, his AR-15 a familiar weight in his hands, rallied his troops. Eugene, as Eugene. "This is it!" he shouted, his voice hoarse but resolute. "We fight for our freedom, for our families, for the soul of America." His words, amplified by 100 voices, echoed across the battlefield, a defiant roar against the tyranny that had gripped their nation. The first wave surged forward, a tide of determined men and women armed with the righteous fury of a people pushed to the brink. Explosions rocked the air as Evans' carefully placed charges shattered the enemy's defenses, opening breaches in the perimeter. Troy and Daniel, their rifles spitting fire, led the charge, their movements honed to deadly perfection through countless firefights. The heavy thud of 7.62 rounds from Troy's SCAR-17S mingled with the staccato bark of Daniel's SR-15, creating a symphony of destruction that echoed across the White House lawn. Section 2. A symphony of destruction. Chad, a whirlwind of controlled aggression, moved through the chaos like a phantom, his Taver X-95 an extension of his will. Each burst of 5.56 fire found its mark, dropping enemy combatants before they could react. He was a force of nature, unstoppable, his determination fueled by a lifetime of fighting for what he believed in. Aubrey, his Kel-Tec RFB spitting .308 Thunder, provided covering fire, his shots carefully placed to maximize their impact. But his true weapon was his mind. With each keystroke on his modified laptop, he infiltrated the enemy's systems, turning their technology against them, sowing confusion and discord in their ranks. Chris, perched atop a nearby building, his DDM-4 V7, a silent instrument of death, provided overwatch. The loopholed Mark V HD scope brought the battlefield into sharp focus, each crosshair placement a calculated decision, each trigger pull a life extinguished. He was the unseen hand, the reaper in the shadows, his presence felt most keenly in the sudden silence that followed each echoing gunshot. Section 3. Echoes in the Halls of Power. The battle raged within the White House itself, the ornate halls and corridors echoing with the sounds of close-quarters combat. Whammy, their ranks thinned but their resolve unbroken, fought with the ferocity of cornered animals, their every movement fueled by desperation and a burning desire for freedom. Eugene, his R-15 spitting defiance, led the way, his years of planning and preparation culminating in this final, desperate gamble. He fought alongside his brothers and sisters in arms, their shared sacrifice forging a bond stronger than blood. Room by room, hallway by hallway, they pushed forward, the enemy's resistance crumbling before their unwavering advance. The air grew thick with the stench of gunpowder and blood, the floor littered with spent casings and the bodies of the fallen. Finally, they reached the Oval Office, the heart of American power, now a symbol of the tyranny they had fought so hard to overthrow. The heavy oak doors, scarred by bullets and explosives, stood as the final barrier between them and their objective.
Fire in the hole!
Evan, his face grimy with sweat and dust, stepped forward, his eyes gleaming with a dangerous light. He placed a shaped charge on the door, the timer ticking down the seconds to detonation. The explosion ripped through the silence, sending splinters of wood and metal flying through the air. As the dust settled, Eugene, his AR-15 raised, led his team into the Oval Office. The room, once a place of power and prestige, was now a scene of chaos and destruction. And there, cowering behind the resolute desk, was the man who had held their nation hostage, his face pale with fear, his eyes wide with the realization that his reign of terror was at an end. It's over. Eugene, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins, approached the desk, his rifle trained on the tyrant. As the sun rose over a liberated Washington, D.C., casting its golden rays on the faces of the weary but triumphant freedom fighters, a new chapter in American history began. The fight had been long and bloody, but freedom once again rang out across the land. The smell of gunpowder lingered in the air, a stark reminder of the battle that had raged just hours before. Yet as the sun climbed higher, casting its warm glow over the ravaged cityscape, a sense of hope, fragile yet undeniable, began to blossom. The White House, bearing the scars of conflict, stood as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a symbol of a nation reborn. From the ashes of tyranny, a new America emerged, one tempered by the fires of resistance and forged in the crucible of shared sacrifice. The grip of oppression, once suffocating, had been shattered, leaving in its wake a nation yearning for healing, for unity, for a return to the principles that had guided its founding. Eugene, his face etched with the weariness of a long and arduous journey, stood amidst the ruins, his AR-15 now silent, a symbol of the struggle that had consumed their lives. Yet in his eyes a spark of hope flickered, fueled by the knowledge that their fight had not been in vain. The faces of his comrades, reflecting a mixture of exhaustion and elation, mirrored his own emotions. They had stared into the abyss, confronted the darkness that had threatened to consume their nation, and emerged victorious. The cost of victory had been high, but the price of freedom, they knew, was eternal vigilance. In the aftermath of the conflict, a profound question arose. What now? The nation they had fought to liberate lay in ruins, its institutions shattered, its people deeply divided. The task of rebuilding, of reconciling, of forging a new path forward seemed daunting, almost insurmountable. Eugene, thrust into the mantle of leadership not by ambition but by circumstance, understood the weight of responsibility now resting upon his shoulders. He knew that the fight for freedom was not a singular event, but an ongoing struggle, a torch to be carried from one generation to the next. And so he gathered his comrades, the men and women who had stood beside him through the darkest of days, and shared his vision for the future. Our fight is not over. We are the guardians of the flame of liberty, and our duty now is to ensure that it burns bright for generations to come. Their mission now was not to rule but to guide, to help heal the wounds of division, to rebuild their nation on a foundation of justice, equality, and respect for the rights of all. It would be a long and arduous journey, fraught with challenges and setbacks, but they had faced down tyranny itself. What could possibly stand in their way now? The story of Whammy, once whispered in hushed tones in the shadows of tyranny, became a tale passed down from generation to generation, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, courage and determination could prevail. They became symbols of the indomitable spirit of a people yearning for freedom, their names etched into the annals of history alongside those who had fought and died for the ideals that had shaped their nation. The weapons they had wielded with such deadly efficiency were carefully preserved, not as trophies of war, but as reminders of the fragility of peace and the constant need for vigilance. They were displayed in museums and memorial halls, silent sentinels guarding the hard-won freedoms they had fought so hard to secure. And as the years turned into decades, and decades into generations, the legacy of Whammy lived on, not in statues or monuments, but in the hearts and minds of a grateful nation. Theirs was a story of courage, of sacrifice, of unwavering belief in the power of the human spirit to overcome even the darkest of times. It was a legacy forged in freedom, a beacon of hope for all who dared to dream of a better tomorrow.